Welcome to the Tarryn Reeves Show, where your journey to empowerment takes center stage. I'm your host, Tarryn Reeves, best-selling author and publishing expert. Together, we'll dive into the hearts and minds of visionaries, disruptors, and trailblazing leaders to explore the most compelling and thought-provoking ideas in life, business, and marketing. Let's inspire, impact, and ignite. This is the Tarryn Reeves Show. Today, I am joined by the amazing woman who heads up our PR and media department here at the publishing house, Miranda Spigener-Sapon. I probably pronounced that incorrectly. I always do. But Miranda is a multiple award-winning writer, director, producer, and publicist. Miranda, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me, Tarryn. This is fantastic.
Always a pleasure. I love the work that we do together for our authors and the amazing exposure of earned media that you are able to secure them. Now, let's have a chat about PR for nonfiction authors specifically. But before we do all of that, can you tell us a bit about your background, how you got started in public relations? Maybe for those who are listening, what even is public relations?
Yeah, from the very get-go, I always say I'm a writer first. And I kind of got thrown. Everybody said, well, you're just so good at marketing and PR. And I'm like, but it's a 24/7 business.
Yes.
Okay, fine, I'll do it. It is good, and PR opens doors.
Yes.
And it's actually helped me more in my filmmaking side of my career in ways, and also integrating what I do with clients and projects and stuff like that. But I got started, you could say I had done some in-house marketing for, like, if I was let's say when I was in film school or I was going through college or whatever, and even like high school, whatever, and I'm working in my parents' construction company office, I'd get thrown into marketing or sales and stuff like that. And so just started picking up a knack. As a writer, they said, oh, you're extra. I said, no, I'm really more introverted than I am extroverted, but it's a balance. I'm a Libra, so, I can balance it. But anyway, I got this job because being a writer, and I started seeing like disconnects in PR because it is a very labor intensive, 24 on all the time kind of business. Even if you set hours, you're still like having to maintain stuff, whether it's your own brand or a client's brand or a project brand, it's constant. Yeah. And I kind of got tired of it, and PR is expensive. And I think we'll probably touch on that later, and a lot of that is because of the tools and just the high labor intensive stuff that's going on, cultivating relationships. And I kind of got tired of, like, especially in the literary space, whether you're fiction or nonfiction or entertainment PR, which is my specialty, but I do a lot with wellness PR and health related, just things to help make the world a better place for humanity. I mean, in these days, we need that. And I wanted to have a PR that was, I would always say, PR for writers by writers, because I was a writer. I would have teams that were writers. And so I wanted something that would get on a level with people and it's a hard-nosed, work hard, play hard business. And I wanted it to feel organic, and I wanted to have a connection with the client to where they didn't just feel like a number. Yeah. I hope I make you feel like a person and not a number.
And that's why we work so well together inside of the publishing company. It's because our clients aren't numbers. They're people with unique goals and aspirations and stories and books. And that's what it's about. It's not just about, let's slap you in the Hollywood Digest, even though nobody's reading that.
And I didn't want, there's just so many different things. And so when I formed my original older PR company, that was different. But I did start where I worked for a publishing house.
Yeah.
I was their in-house director of PR. Yeah. I handled a lot of high-profile authors and stuff like that. And then I consulted with 3 of the big 5 traditional houses, who they are, but I'm not going to mention names out of respect, and doing some PR consulting for them as well. But doing that, it was always about connecting with the client, with the author, making them feel welcome, making them feel like, okay, so you write. And sometimes, especially in the arts and writing, people get imposter syndrome, or I call it, I know it's sometimes a trigger word to say this, but I call it artist suicide because which is the same as imposter syndrome, because you're thinking, oh, I suck. And then you go, no, I'm a good writer. I know it. You get a good review in and you're good. But it's just, that's the nature of the arts. And so I wanted to cultivate that and said, yes, I relate. I know where you're coming from. I've been there. And so taking that, and when I left the publishing house and formed my own PR, and it was also because I'm also highly picky about my own stuff. So I thought, well, why not have a firm to where then I'll just have someone else represent me, and then when I'm not representing others. But so I had started first with MS Film PR Literary, and that was the first PR company. And now we're kind of evolving. We're in soft launch. I think as I mentioned to you, we have Lavender Sage PR, which is it's going to be our new brand. And it's all about calm and clarity, and then the wisdom of sage mixed into one. And you don't usually get that. And so it's got the same ideals as what I was doing at MS. And like I said, while my specialty is entertainment PR and literary, we do dabble into, because I've worked in aerospace, I've worked in a lot of numbers, so I know a lot of industries across the board, from construction to wellness to health. And so we can definitely take that on. But it's just all about being organic and cultivating relationships. And we all know it's a business that's hard to guarantee, but then there's ways to work around. And so I hope I kind of answered that. And I just evolved. And so I got out of the PR for a while because I needed to focus on my filmmaking projects and stuff that I was being commissioned for. But this is why we're bringing it back, because the PR firm can also represent my production studio that I'm partnered with. And then we've got other clients and like-minded and stuff that you're doing and your press house is doing and everything. And let's make the world a better place and have fun doing it.
Otherwise, what's the point?
Synergy,
That's right. Now, Miranda, let's talk about like PR strategies specifically, because I'm sure we've got listeners who are like, well, tell us how to like get into PR for our books. So can you share some effective PR strategies for people? Now, we obviously specialize in nonfiction. So can we talk about some effective PR strategies for authors of nonfiction books? Because I know that they're different.
Yeah, they're different, but then they're the same in some ways. And the way I look at it is the only difference is who you're pitching. Like, you wouldn't want to pitch a journalist that their beat is nonfiction, and then you're pitching them a fiction book. Or vice versa. But for the most part, a lot of the strategies are similar. In nonfiction, you tend to see more like people doing self-publishing and hybrid publishing, whereas fiction, you're seeing more and more of that too. I mean, examples of like, I'm not going to go into the fiction side of things, but just as an example, there's an Apple TV series called Silo. Great show, by the way. They're not paying me to say that. It's just I like it personally. And that novel was a self-published novel that ended up being an Apple TV series. But you do see more people that they'll go the self-publishing or the hybrid route because they want to have higher percentages. Whereas if you're at a standard publishing company, like a traditional, it's like 8-9%.
Yeah.
If you're a starting author, at least, versus if you're with a hybrid or self or whatever, then you can get upwards more than 25%, depending, on what your deal is. And you just have more ownership over your brand and your work. And that's usually what a lot of people who are gurus and people who are writing a nonfiction or a memoir or something like that. So I like to use a hybrid when promoting fiction and nonfiction. Like, for example, some people, they tend to be run and gun and they forget. If you're not in a traditional, you need to have a traditional publishing mindset. Even if, let's say, you're publishing with a hybrid publisher, and I'm not against that. The only thing I'm against is vanity press. Vanity presses act like they're traditional, and then you find out there's all these things. We all know about those.
The amount of disasters we pick up from that industry is amusing.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
Exactly. Yeah. And I always tell people, hybrid and self-publishing is great because you control. but you need to make sure that you put money aside for a PR campaign.
100%. It's just like
Because
anything in business, right? Like if you fail to market something, it's not going to sell. It's just it's the way business is. And a book is a thing that you have to market. It's something that people are going to consume. And it doesn't matter if it's fiction or nonfiction.
yeah.
You have to market it.
Yeah, and when you are with a hybrid or you're with a self-publishing where you're doing it all yourself, you need to have a team. I'm a person that tends to want to do everything myself, but I've learned that get a team because you need to be focusing on preparing. What happens when you do book that big media, whether it's small, whatever. And so some strategies I'll go for, just to touch quickly on those points, is go for the low hanging first, especially if you are an emerging author and you do not have, maybe you have a low social media, you have less than 1,000 followers. I mean, that even 1,000 is not much, but you still get traction when you got 1,000 or more followers on your social media. If you've got less than that, low hanging fruit is going for, doesn't mean that they're less, but you've got groups like Thrive Global and Authority Magazine, and they get a lot of PR through that. And you kind of get to control the narrative a bit. I think like I said, you've been booked on some of those before and other people, and you just have to work with them and kind of pre-edit it. But because the columnist usually doesn't edit a lot, but it's on a platform like Medium or Thrive, which is Ariana Huffington's HuffPost founder site, and you get on that. Yes. You get the low, and that's just one example. Then there's other like bloggers and online media that's easier to get to. The bigger ones sometimes, especially when you're new and emerging and you don't have a whole lot of press, it might be hard to get on GMA. You're kind of going to work with them or Today Show or whatever, because it's highly competitive. And then you might get booked, and you're like, okay, now we got to wait a month, or we've got to wait another month. But as long as you're in the door, it's going to get there. So I would say go for that. Other thing is get your book in the hands of like influential people. And by saying that, I don't mean social media influencers. I'm not against that. There's some really fantastic people who've become great influencers. And then there's the ones that you're just doing selfie sticks and just trying to get likes or whatever. Yeah. But there are some good ones out there, and there are ones that are truly with a journalism mindset. And so when I say influential, it could be if you're a famous psychologist, who's a noted psychologist that you admire their work. Maybe you quote them in your podcast, or you quote them out whenever you do interviews or whatever. Or maybe you quote them when you're just typing on your social media. Maybe there's a way you can find out how to connect with them and maybe get them a book. If you have a PR professional, it's closer. DIY, I usually have to work with people. And I said, okay, let's see what we can do. This is what you need to do, and kind of go from there. But get it in the hands of like influential people in your audience network, whether it's a colleague or a professor or a celebrity or whoever, or someone you encountered or whatever. Or maybe you were sitting next to a famous person in the nail salon and y'all got to chat. Oh, okay. And you followed each other on Instagram, whatever. Find a way. And that's one way to do it. And that's a good way to kind of help boost some things. It's just general networking. Also, doing planning like small, intimate events or introductions. If you're doing the DIY, it's a little harder. It means you're going to have to do some hardcore networking, and then that takes you away. But when you have a PR person, we are constantly looking at ways to go, you know what? I may say, hey, Tarryn, I would like to set up a little salon at X Cafe and this cafe, and you could maybe sign in a couple, maybe bring 10 copies of your book and sign some copies, or maybe do a giveaway, or maybe do a little mini speech, and then we'll give everybody a coffee voucher or something. Or we'll just do like a meet and greet, not an official book launch or signing, but setting up like mini events that makes it organic. Have fun photo ops. There's different things. Maybe plan if there's a festival going on, and you could get, even if you're getting the cheapest booth, which means you've got the one person, basically it's a stand with a little sign. Any of that gets a presence, and it just gets you out there. And you're like, hey, I'm going to be at the Sydney Fair or whatever, and I'm going to be in the wellness section because you're someone that speaks on wellness.
Yes.
And that's great. Anywhere that you can engage the public, and it can be private, it can be public, it can be a free event, little mini free events, things that where people can feel important and they're connecting with you and you're reaching, and then word of mouth spreads. I always encourage doing things like that. It's easier when you do have a PR team because we're doing that for you, but you can still do it if you're on the DIY. And then I guess just one thing I do is this last item, and this is when you're working very closely with the publisher of your book. Now, if you are, whether it be a hybrid, a traditional, and I've had clients on all across the board, whether they self-publish, where now self-publishing, you're basically dealing with the author, but with a hybrid where it's a joint venture kind of thing, or it's a publisher or a small publishing house. A lot of small publishing houses usually welcome. They love it when an author has a PR team because they don't typically. I always tell people you're almost better off self-publishing. Nothing against, there's some great small publishers out there, but they are using a traditional model and they don't have the PR marketing. They have to literally hire someone like what I'm doing to do that. And so when they bring someone, and I always will tell, and one publisher that kind of got annoyed, I felt like, were they annoyed by me because I was asking them questions? But I've been a publishing executive, so I know what to look for. I worked with the big five. I worked with a large midsize in New York. And so I'm not trying to be a know-it-all, but I said, okay, when the galleys coming out? When is this? And sometimes they'll be like, do we need galleys? I'm like, yes, you need galleys. How are you going to ever get in bricks and mortar stores if you don't get in galleys? You're not going to get in libraries. Even if it's print on demand, people say, oh, but they won't take bookstores, Barnes and Nobles, Angus and Robertson, if you're in Australia, or Dymox, whatever. They won't take if you're in that. They won't take it if you're a print on demand. Not true. They're not going to go and stock 50 books like if you were with Random House or Simon & Schuster or Harper or something like that. But if you got one book in the store, and all those, even in just your area, let's say you just started with Sydney or you just started with LA. LA is hard because it's a big city, but I can do it. I've gotten clients in the Grove, and that's a huge thing. But you have to have a marketing plan. You submit it. They have all these publishers, all these big books, these big box chains have small press divisions, and you go through them and you submit and you have to go through it. Stuff that I'm working with you on is like, okay, let's see if we can get you in. And they might say, well, you're going to be online. Okay, well, you know what? We'll work with it. There's criteria. If it's a hardcover, they don't want case laminate. They want cloth and jacket. If it's a paperback, they don't want glossy. They want matte finish because they'll say that looks
process.
It's a lot. And so I always tell people work closely. If you're self-publishing, then you as the publisher need to apply knowledge. That's why I said if you're self-publishing, you need to make sure you have a publicist, and you want a publicist that knows publishing.
That's right.
Which a lot of them are literary PR, but they don't have a publishing background, which I've done. I'm not trying to say I'm perfect, but I'm just saying I just apply.
Like you said, by writers for writers, because we know what's required. We know the process. You can't just walk through the door of a bookstore and be like, hey, you want to stock my book? The answer is going to be no. And the amount of times that knocks your confidence and things when you're already dealing with imposter syndrome and stuff, it doesn't have to be that hard.
Yeah,
follow the process. Have a marketing plan. Have a marketing budget. And when you jump through all the hoops, that's when you have success.
Exactly. And there's a reason why the traditional platforms work. Apply what works. What Penguin Random House has been doing for years, there's a reason.
Yes.
When it comes to your book to film rights, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, if you're on a nonfiction side, you could have a biopic done on your work, or you could have a documentary done based on your book. And then that comes to, depending if you're going to go an independent route, then you don't have to usually do there's different things because I've worked with both studio side and independent. And so there's agents you've got to talk with, you've got to go through all that kind of stuff. And so a lot of small people go, oh, I don't know, unless you're actually here in LA or you're in New York, you're not going to have that. But then there's ways that you can get that leverage for that. So I always say working close with your publisher. If you're DIY, then that means you're going to have to do your homework and stuff and kind of go from there. So those are some of my key strategy points. I would say that is low-hanging fruit to get your name out there, get the books in the hands of influential people in your wheelhouse of where you're trying to go,
as you,
of your audience. That's and then you're different. So you're not competing with them, but you're a different angle. And then 3, do mini events. Not only are they cheaper, but you're engaging. Because imagine if you have a small cafe and you're doing, even if it ends up being your book launch party, and it was supposed to be just a meet and greet. Yeah. Imagine a small cafe that might only hold 20 people. When you get the photos going, it looks like, oh, you had 100 people. I don't know, it's actually only 10, but because it's a little trick. I know I'm saying that publicly now, but still everybody does that. But it's like, you want to see the crowd like, ooh, look what's going on, and just have it in a good location, because if you can allow some pop-ins to come through.
That's right. You're in a public place, people get curious. And you can invite them in, and then it just grows exponentially. And then they might know somebody who could benefit from your book. So then the word of mouth starts, momentum, all of it.
Yeah. And the last thing, again, is just working close with the publisher, or working close with yourself, your publishing hat, if you're DIY in it. So that way it's done. And I always will tell an author when they're with a small press or a hybrid, I said, make an introduction to me. I'm here because we all succeed. If you succeed, we all succeed. So I'm not trying to tell the publisher how to do things, but if you can bend a little bit and provide it, sometimes it's expensive to get those extra galleys. I said, you don't need to send me 50 books. If I can have 10 physical copies, then the rest I will give ebooks where I can. And I only give the physicals to like the high fruit, but still. And then if someone really wants it, if it looks like, hey, this is an up and coming low hanging, because you never know with low hanging fruit. Those are just, I would say, the key core steps that I feel work for all types.
That's right. Now, we touched on social media very briefly before, like a social media following. How important do you think that it is for somebody to have a personal brand, be it a website, social following, branding, speaker reels, like all that sort of stuff when it comes to PR campaigns for nonfiction books?
Essential, because you are the face behind your book. Someone might say, oh, that's a beautiful cover. Then they look, you're like, where's this author at? They're nowhere. And then you got the shy authors that they're introverted, whatever. And as writers, we typically tend to be that way. I mean, we have our moments, but that's why you have a publicist, because then they can push you out there and say, come on. And the key is a brand. If you are starting, you wrote a book, it's brilliant. Oh my gosh, it looks great. Especially in nonfiction, you wrote a book. So you're either an expert in your field, or you're even if you're not an expert, you're some kind of jack of all trades, master of none, or master of everything, or whatever. You tend to be very coveted at whatever you're doing. You're some kind of expert, or you're some kind of jack of trades, because you have knowledge in that area. If it's a memoir, okay, maybe you went through PTSD or a trauma and you're writing about that. So you're going to be speaking to those special interest groups. Either way, some insight on what you're writing about.
Yes.
So you need to put yourself. So I always say, okay, I got social media. Oh, do I need yes, you need a website. I don't even care if it starts with one page. A website is the portal to you. And because social media, to me, even though it's getting to be a norm, to me, I call it pseudo-professional, because it's semi-casual, it's professional. You can have your professional social and then your personal, but still a website has your bio. It has your headshot. It'll have your social media on there. You need a one-stop shop portal to you.
Yeah.
And it can be simple, and we'll grow from there.
That's right.
And you're establishing. And I always tell people, there's some people, it might be, especially with someone who's brand new and they have nothing out there. I said, if you had one little article for example, that might have got, maybe you were featured in your local paper because you supported a charity. It might not be what your book is about. Let me see it. I want to see anything that any kind of press has written up to you, good or bad, negative or positive. How can we leverage that? Is there something? Sometimes I'll go, nah. And then not only whether we use it or not, at least I'm aware of it and it's not sneaking up in the past. Someone wrote a negative review. Maybe you owned a restaurant, which is unrelated to what you're writing about, and cafe, and they said, oh, their employees are rude. The owner was, maybe you ended up closing down and you went out of business for whatever reason. You got some negative press from it. At least I'm aware and we can address it.
That's right.
Because the last thing you want to do is get into crisis PR, and that's the most expensive PR there is. But I'm just, not to get into that. If you are emerging, there's little things. What if one of the only press, I had one client that said, I think it was a campaign I did, and the only press they ever had was when they were 14. I think they got written up in the local paper because they won a spelling bee. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. That's an accolade. That's an accolade. That's something we can use. And it shows, and then you were quoted in that article. We're not going to like promote the heck out of it, but why not? It's little nuggets and you're aware of it.
That's right. And if you are starting from ground zero, that's absolutely okay. Like I'll give you a case study example, if you like. One of our clients wanted to publish a book based on her life experience. She had no business, no website, no brand, no strategy, no previous PR, no social media, none of that. And so what we did was we developed a brand for her. We built a website for her. We helped her write, publish, and market her book. We did a big book launch in Sydney for her where we had over 100 people come to that book launch. Then we got her in various press. And then that book's actually been a finalist in some awards now. So you can start from ground zero. We also developed her social media and we wrote the content, we did the graphics. So she basically just wrote the book and then showed up to the events because she wasn't interested in any of the other stuff. And you don't have to be if you want to hire a team for that, but you can start from ground zero and grow something amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I always tell you, the brand is the portal to you. If you are introverted or shy, or you don't want to be in that space, then you have a team to do it for you. Now, you still should be engaging. You should be, of course, they'll say, okay, well, when I need to do an interview, that's engaging. Well, that's fine too. But you also got to help your team share that stuff and little things. So yeah, you can start from ground zero. I've done that a lot with people where they had nothing. Just like you said with this person, that you build it. And you could say this sounds really cliche as hell, but it's like, if you build it, they will come. Going back to Field of Dreams, great movie. But yeah, if you build stuff, that's how they see about you. And you don't have to be, because a website is it's your picture and your bio and your book and your social media there. And then they're like, cool. And then they can email you, and then you can go back to your team, or even if it's your brother or your sister helping you, they can say, hey, can you help me answer this email? Because I don't want to engage with my audience. And then your team will also coach you to make you more comfortable.
That's right.
And if you are very shy or introverted or nervous or whatever. So yeah, those are just really key. It's just so important. And not just don't just have social media, because I always tell people I have a love-hate relationship with that. I'm like, and don't put it all like, oh, I want to get this. This person did 1 million on their video on TikTok or Instagram. And I'm going, yeah, but usually they want something and then they're demanding. I said, and then it's going to be short-lived. I said, you need to be progressive on your side. How can you turn the tables to where it's kind of going? Because again, not everybody is at the level of a Stephen King or a Dr. Oz or like my client Gunter, or none of them they all started somewhere.
That's right.
Whether you're well known in your community or you're well known in your country, and then if you're wanting to break in and get some notice in the US, that's a whole market. So yeah, it's really important to have a place that people can go so they can learn. People say, oh, what's a website? Everybody's going to Google anyway. Well, I said, yeah, but would you rather have your website come up on Google
Yeah.
Don't just Google, because you can't control what's in a search, but you can control what's on your website. That's what the facts are going to be. And then you can put FAQs on there if you do get bad press, or if you need to answer something. It's set.
It's crucial. It's vital, especially if you're going to claim that space as an authority in your field by writing a book. You have to have the professional fronting. Like, social media is fun and it's amazing and it's a great way to build community, but you still have to have all of those old school, if you like.
Yeah, I'll tell people, I said, social media is just surface level shenanigans, to put it in clean terms.
And most people have their followers and things like that. Yeah. It's very, very smoke and mirror.
Yeah, and you need to dig deeper, because to find those hidden gems is by having, and that way that the target, the media, they can find you. They may Google you, but when they Google you, what's going to come up? A bunch of social. And then it's confusing, because we live in an age that there's so much content that we're all getting headaches from it. And if they can go, oh, there's Tarryn's website.
Yeah.
Boom. Even if it's not at the top of the search engine, if it's on the front page, if I Google you, your page does come up on the first page at the top. And some people, it comes up in the middle. That's fine too, as long as they don't have to keep scrolling. No one wants to do that. But yeah, it's so essential to have your brand and have someone that can help you if you can't do it. But definitely.
I want to talk about some common mistakes that authors make when trying to do their own PR. PR is a whole beast in itself. Like you said, it's so time intensive, and you have to have the knowledge and relationships. Now, some common mistakes that I've seen a lot of authors who are trying to do it themselves make is walking in the door of a bookstore and being like, hey, buy my book. That's not the process. They're going to laugh you out the door. Or not having a one-page either website or podcast sheet or something when approaching podcasts, trying to go in too high. So hitting for Forbes and all of these high-level media outlets when you've never got any press before. They don't know who you are, what you're doing, approaching with no press release. Like, you've got to have like a press release. And the last thing I guess I want to cover as a common mistake is not following up. They send one email and they go, oh, they never got back to me. They're journalists. They've got 500 deadlines and they get like 1 million emails a day. You have to follow up, especially if you don't have that previous relationship built with that person. They don't know who you are. You're a spammy email in their inbox.
Yeah. And one thing is, here's a good example to think about when it comes to DIY. And again, I'm not against DIY projects. I do DIY projects. Me and my husband, he's doing projects around the house. We're doing little things on the weekend. That's good, because you know how to do stuff yourself and you know how to jump in. If something comes up and you can't afford a PR anymore and you need to do it, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's about, a lot of times they jump in and they don't really fully strategize it, or they think, or maybe they studied marketing in school or in college or whatever, or they worked in the marketing department of their job. That doesn't make you a publicist. And the thing is, and then that's where the mistakes come in. And then a designer friend of mine made an example going, nothing against DIY, but he says, okay, hey, I think he posted a link to someone that was doing, so I think they were trying to make everybody loves the loft look, or exposed brick walls, exposed ceilings and stuff like that. And I think she was trying to do she took a plain wall. Like, I'm in a podcast studio right now. And so these are plain walls with some lighting effects, but she was saying, imagine taking that. And then she was doing this weird like pattern she put down with tape, and it counts like, I wonder how that's going to look. And then even if it does look good, how long is it going to last before it starts peeling away, before it starts whatever? And he's like, why do all that when you can just hire a designer? Because you hear about these DIY projects gone awry.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. I said, hire a professional.
Yeah.
I hate to say you get what you pay for.
You do.
But if you think, oh, you can do it, or if you think, there's examples where someone's got maybe a different business that's separate from their book, and they're like, well, I have a marketing team for that, but are they experts in literary PR?
It's a different beast.
It's a different thing. You might know people. You might even be in the right city where stuff is, but it's a beast to do. And you've got to strategize. And so a big thing is what I do for people that, okay, they're like, oh, I've been pricing. Because I'll tell people 2012 prices, they go, oh, it's so expensive. I said, yeah, you can search to find a publicist to do these 2000, that's like 2012 prices. Now we're in 2024. And I said, all the work that goes behind it. Yes. And then I said, sometimes I'll tell people, you need to set aside whatever. They said, hey, even if you say, well, I only got 5,000 saved up. Okay, well, let's see what we can do.
Yeah.
Or
start somewhere.
There's things that you can play around while you're tipping away and you're waiting on sales to come through and you're working a job and all that. We have one plan that we do where it's like a consultation thing. And I said, okay. And I had this with an example. This was a fiction author, and I also did it with a nonfiction author too, but I'm going to use my fiction author because I helped get her, when she did sign with me, she became a USA Today bestseller. She made the LA Times list, and she did a speaking appearance at New York Book Expo during Book Week, and then a bunch of events around LA. And so, we had her everywhere. She did a big festival where she was on the stage with top writers and showrunners from NBC, and it was fantastic. And she was a featured panelist. And I said, but when she started, she kind of wanted to get her headspace around PR and marketing. So she said, okay. And she did self-publish her book, but she knew she needed a PR team for that and to help build up her brand and stuff like that. And so she said, and she knew my time because I get tons of people that come in and they just want to talk for hours, pick my brain. And I'm like, okay, I could have been doing something else. I'm no offense. I like to talk to people, but I'm like, okay, I just gave away the farm. And then you might not even come back and sign with me. So that's why we have consultation fees. And believe me, you don't want to hire a publicist by the hour because that's ridiculous. My hourly is $500 an hour with a 2-hour minimum. Yeah. Which is actually not bad. So you're getting $1,000, 2-hour consultation for $1,000. Yeah. And I take it a step further. I give you a takeaway. I'll give you like a comprehensive, like a 1-sheet mini press kit that you can use to maybe get your and this is what she did. I said, she actually did 2 consultations at $500. Yeah. We have some junior publicists people that we'll say between $250 and $500. If they want me, then it's going to be a lot more just because of everything I got going on. And I said between $250 and $500, 2-hour minimum. We'll sit down either in person or like a Zoom or whatever, and we'll have a consultation. Yeah. If they're local, prefer to do it in person so I can meet them, get to know them, show them my computer. But if not, we can do it on a Zoom, whatever they're comfortable with. And then I said, okay, this is what we go through. And we brainstorm together. We talk about what they want. I tell them what they can set up. I give them a few secrets. I give them tips. And then after that, then I'll put together either the next day or by the end of the week, they will have a takeaway that I will email them and say, okay, here's your PDF, your 1-sheet. Because some people don't know how to do 1-sheet. Some people don't, or even if they do, I'm like, okay, here you go. This is not a freebie, but this is part of, you're getting something. And then what this author did, she did one more consultation. And then by the end of the year, because we started, I think, at the beginning of the year, it was toward the end of the year, she says, I'm ready to sign. She ended up being a client for 4 years. Yeah. And it led to all that stuff we did. Yeah. And I said, because she just wanted to get her headspace and find out what she needed to do, what her goals were. And I appreciated that. But she also appreciated the time and what I was offering. And it gave her a head start because those are the kind of clients you want because they're proactive and they're planning. They're thinking. They don't want to waste their time. I don't want them wasting their time doing meaningless DIY when you have someone to work with you. And if you have to put aside, because it's easier to save $500 or $1,000 for a 2-hour consultation than to be paying a $4,000 a month retainer.
That's right.
when you're not ready, and then you have to stop the campaign. I've had that happen before, and I'm going, because I only do with PR, I'm very leery on people that promise a lot and say, oh, you see these ads all the time about, we're going to guarantee you in Forbes, and then you're going to in 1 month. And I'm like, okay, we all know Forbes has a bunch of freelance opportunities you can do, and that's pretty much what you're getting. There's nothing wrong with that, but there's a difference between an actual Forbes writer and then these guaranteed things.
Yes.
Just because it has the name on it.
And the pay to play scenario and actual authority building for your brand, like paying to be in the same article as Oprah Winfrey or whoever it is. Like, everybody knows that's pay to play, unless you've got backed media and you've been in the industry for a while and you have claimed your space as an authority. Everyone knows that that's pay to play. And it's not.
And it takes you back to the low-hanging fruit. When you're beginning, I've had a client that I literally terminated.
Yeah.
Because it was stressful. I said, you turned down 5 people because you didn't think, oh, I did. I said, you don't know if that journalist is trying to venture into a different beat. Or maybe they like what you're doing, but maybe their website doesn't show, oh, but I don't see how it's relevant. You don't know that. What if you're the first feature on their website or on their publication, and they get a lot of traction and they have a lot of clout behind them, and what if you have that? Because you went and looked at their site and what you're speaking on or what your book is about or whatever, or your expertise is on, isn't going along with that. You might be the first one. And what's the rule of when people say you're the first out the gate? I mean, look what happened to Netflix.
Yeah.
A company that was in the video rental. Basically, they were an online Blockbuster. Blockbuster existed. And it was like, they came out of nowhere. Now they're doing original content. And everybody wants a Netflix show. They were the first at the gate. They can make the rules.
Yeah.
If you're the first content on that site, you might get a little extra traction. But if you're nitpicking and turning things down, don't turn down the low-hanging fruit, because it adds up. Even if it's a whole ecosystem, it adds up, and it's practice. So park your ego at the door and get out there. Like, if you are invited to speak at a conference or on a podcast and you're like, oh, they only have 100 listeners, or I'm only episode number 2. So what? Go out and practice your message, because the more you practice, the better you're going to get at it. And the more you can into, from a mindset, that role as the authority in your industry. You never know who's going to listen to that. And it builds one on top of the other. Like, I didn't start out getting the media that I'm getting now. Absolutely not. Yeah. Like, it's a building thing. The biggest common mistake is, to me, I feel like, besides like not thinking your strategy through, that's one. But the other one is kind of letting that, everybody has a little bit of narcissism, but keeping that in check. Yes. You're human. You're going to have some of it. Even if, like me, you're highly empathic, you're sensitive, still. Yeah. You need to check the ego at the door. I don't care if that person, they only have 100 Instagram followers. Doesn't matter. Big deal. They believe in you. Yeah. And you don't know if they're going to, tomorrow, they release a video, all of a sudden, I've seen it happen. I've seen people, and they still, their followers. And they might have low followers, but then look at the engagement of their post. I've seen people with like less than 500 Instagram followers, and they've got like 1,000 people liked the comment. Yeah. Even if they didn't comment, 1,000 people liked it, and those are organic. Yeah. And I'm like, I said, it's traction, and look at it as practice. And in this business of writing books and artists, yes, you want to get out there, but people, you tend to let that ego, like, ooh, I wrote a book now. No, be humble. Yes. Later on, we can push those down. More things will surpass. If it's good, if it's a great article, then we'll keep it up. You never know. But always appreciate any low-hanging fruit you get, because that's easy access. Doesn't mean that's what they call low-hanging fruit. Doesn't mean that's a bad lemon just because it's hanging low on the tree. It just happens to be where it's at. So take that and run with it. Make your lemonade. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's right. Or make tequila, whatever. Or crack the tequila, either or, depending on the time of day, I suppose. Now,
we've covered a lot for the PR for our nonfiction authors, but before we go, Miranda, I'd love for you to share a piece of advice that somebody has given you, and it can be personal or professional, that has changed your life.
There's always different takeaways. And some of the things that there's two things. One thing is I always tell people, be present and in the moment. I've slightly touched on that. I've had that advice given to me from like family and just growing up with values. And my dad would always say, hey, as humans, we all have our idiosyncrasies and you have to give and take what you accept and what not to accept. But if you're kind to everybody, applying empathy in everything you do. And like I said, be present. Just like if you're a parent, whether you're a parent of a human or a fur baby, it all counts. Either way, because I have 3 fur babies that think they're human and 3 cats, and cats are different because they definitely think they're human, although they would never admit it. But yeah, be present. Just like fathers, whether someone's married or not married or whatever your situation is, be present in anything you have, whether it's parenting or in a job. You should be present, be in the moment. And then if it gets toxic, then you can reevaluate the way. But be present, and that's how you grow. And I've always just been taught, be kind. Even when someone's not kind to you, you don't have to like them. You don't have to forgive them. You can forgive, but you don't have to forget. You can just put it in your bank and go, okay, you were a real snot to me. Like, how many times have you gone to a high school reunion? You might not have been, you could have been the most popular. I was kind of friends with everybody. I wasn't in the in crowd, but I wasn't in the out crowd. I hung out with some geeks and nerds, but then which I preferred them better because more pressure on those in crowds. But I had friends, and it's the people you're looking at. And then when you start getting like successful in life after school, after college, and now you're working, and then some of the people that were mean to you in like high school, middle school, and then all of a sudden you didn't even talk to me, and now you're sending me friend requests, and I'm like, where'd you come from? And people will say, and your parents will tell you that you don't recognize it when you're young. Because you're like, they go, no, just watch it. When you get out in the world, they're going to come back. Yeah. And sure enough, a lot of times they do. They'll be like, oh, so-and-so is a writer. Oh, because I'm in Hollywood. Oh, that's your connection now. And sometimes you don't have to like go and socialize, but just be kind to people. Because in high school, there's hormones, there's craziness. And you're always going to deal with crazy. But if you're present and you're comfortable with yourself, that's the big thing. Yeah. The other thing is, it's just a general that I've had mentors also tell me, and family members, is growing up with, it even kind of goes with that leave no trace philosophy. Leave something or someone or place better than where you found it. It's just like, I can't stand it if there's been places where people want to go do camping or they want to go on a hike, and then they closed it off because you'll go on a hike and there's trash everywhere. And I'm like, really? How hard is it to take the trash, stick it in your pocket? I know you don't want to, but usually when you're hiking, you got a bag anyway. Just carry it to the trash can. Don't leave your wrappers. Same thing, whether it's physical or literal or figuratively, leave it a little better than how you found it. I love so that way the next person that comes along, and I think those 2 points follow each other, being present and leaving better than you found it. And that's how we make the world a better place. That's just kind of my general philosophy on life.
I love it. So just to summarize everything we've kind of chatted about, Miranda, PR for books, you have to go after the low-hanging fruit, park your ego at the door, set aside some budget for marketing. Ongoing marketing is crucial. And then when it comes to life and things like that, be present in the moment. Otherwise, you'll miss the magic or the opportunity. And be kind, be present, and try to leave a little bit of magic in your day, whether that be making someone else's day better, smiling at the person at the checkout, picking up your trash or somebody else's trash, and just make the world a better place.
Yeah, I mean, how often when you go to the grocery store And sometimes you try to remember, and it's nothing that I want kudos from it, just by naturally, I'll ask, how are you doing? And then sometimes you'll get the person, they'll be like, oh, I'm fine. But then sometimes they'll go, thank you for asking. And I'm like, because you would be surprised when people in the service industry, how much they get knocked down, how many times they get yelled at, or a homeless person comes in and whatever. You don't know what that person's going through. And if you just sometimes, like I said, sometimes just asking someone like, or when they say, hi, how are you? And you just say, fine. Or the people that don't even answer it right, they'll just say, hi. Well, that's not what I said. If you actually, that means you're listening. You're being present. And sometimes we all do it. We're all guilty. Sometimes
or just giving someone else a compliment can make.
That's how we make the world better. Yeah.
All right, Miranda, it has been an absolute pleasure having you as my guest today. Thank you so much for spending your time with us.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been amazing.
That's a wrap on today's episode. If you love the insights and inspiration, don't let it end here. Hit subscribe to stay connected and turn your visions into reality alongside our community of changemakers. I'm Tarryn Reeves. Thank you for joining me. And remember, your story has power. See you in the next episode.